So hello, my friends. It's John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and we've got you at Postscript today. What we have today is a wonderful friend and an upcoming speaker at Transition Talks is with us, Tom Drake. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hey, John. Good to see you.
Well, we were looking forward to having you on the 19th of July. This will be your second time out here, I believe. And they tell us, for those who are not familiar with your name, tell us a quick paragraph on your background.
Well, Thomas Drake, grew up in Texas and Vermont, military brat, spent a number of years in summary in the military, both Air Force and during the Cold War, flying on various aircraft, but primarily focused on intelligence, electronic warfare. Was at the in the Navy as an intel officer, did a lot of industry consulting, Booz Allen Hamilton, got up to management level. Was at the CIA for a short period. And then right before 9/11, I had applied for a position in NSA and became a senior executive. And my first day on the job was 9/11. So my life is kind of bifurcated. There's life before 9/11, there's life after 9/11. And during the course of my time early on in NSA, I was confronted with my government going off the rails in terms of the law, Constitution, Fourth Amendment, violations of privacy, massive multi-billion-dollar corruption, and 9/11 intelligence failures. So I could not remain silent, and I chose to speak up and out and found myself, long story short, after a number of years, after being a material witness on a number of investigations by the government, I ended up finding myself being indicted some years later by the government, facing 35 years in prison, and spent 14 months doing everything I had to with legal representation, both civil and criminal, to stay out of what effectively would be the rest of my life in prison. And the good news is I was able to do that, but paid an extraordinarily high price.
Interesting story in and of itself, but it even gets more interesting as far as I'm concerned, because I met you because, among other things, early on after 9/11, you had discovered a guy named Chris Robinson in over in England. And Chris Robinson dreamed about the future. I mean, like really, for MI5 and Scotland Yard and so on.
Yeah.
And he could tell you to the date and the location where something was going to happen in there. And I heard about Chris Robinson, and so I hunted. I mean, being a futurist, that seemed to make a lot of sense. And he talked about you, and so that's how we got hooked up together. But why in the world would some guy from the NSA be thinking about and wondering about somebody that dreams about the future?
Yeah, well, that's how we first met. That really is the original contact. Interestingly enough, this is shortly after 9/11. I ended up, because it's like, hey, let's see what else in terms of technology and advanced analysis, even if it's non-conventional or unconventional, even non-linear. Uh, hey, let's take advantage of it. And there was, no longer exists, disappeared a long time ago, but there was a couple of groups, but one in particular that was actually looking at unconventional ways to conduct intelligence, not just collection, but in particular the analysis. And that meant going far afield. That meant going into areas of ontology that are not considered to be, say,
Yeah.
standard thinking or conventional wisdom. Um, and in fact, some people would actually poo-poo it. That's how I ended up being open-minded enough to consider any and all possibilities. And I was aware from others that there was this unique, and you can say, a phenomena, people, precognitive psychics. There's a number of police departments over the years who have taken advantage of their services, who could either go back in time to a place where there was something, especially when life was at stake, or people ended up being murdered or hurt, or going into the future. So it's both in terms of pre and post, past and future, while they're still in the present. So this is where language sometimes comes up short, because you're dealing with what appear to be significantly nonlinear experiences. And that's how I ended up, because given what I myself had been working on with another project, it certainly overlapped. But I had to do all this clandestinely, because if I had revealed any of this directly through formal channels, I would have been laughed out of the room. And it is true. He actually had dreams that showed the towers being hit. And unfortunately, with his frustration as well as mine during some earlier work, 9/11 was in essence a future known event based on human intentionality that was obviously at the world level. And you're talking about, we know what happened, right? But this is the thing about intelligence. You're supposed to provide indications and warning, and the system had been blinking red. Even George Tenet had said that for the previous 3 years. So, and so I began to further investigate that, and ended up meeting him. Ultimately, met you. Okay. It's hard to believe how far back that goes now. I mean, that's, my gosh, it's going on 25 years next year. I mean, so that's a quick thumbnail of meeting Chris. But I recognized there was something about this phenomena. There was something, some will call it, well, it's like a prophet almost, but a prophet predicting a future. And I was actually not formally involved, but I certainly became aware of his Arizona experiments, which, this is where you test whether, because I knew about, I mean, this is previous background, a lot of people that were fake or involved in trickery. This was the real deal. There was really something here where you could, in fact, delve deeper sort of into the consciousness of intentionality. I'll just say it that way. And the unique form with him is having this sort of this semi-conscious dream state in which he sees, I say sees in quotes, sees this future. And this was very much overlapping with my own sort of traditional training as a analyst and intelligence, where it was never a certainty, but patterns emerge, patterns both past and present. And then you're making like predictions. What happens if, or if something is different from the norm, what does that mean? And the whole point was to keep people out of harm's way. Well, he predicted 9/11. He went to the authorities. And this was much longer story, involves some additional individuals who are willing to listen. And then could we incorporate this kind of analysis, non-traditional, non-linear, into sort of future analysis and keep people out of harm's way?
Yeah, well, it was a good idea and a novel idea, I thought, from your point of view, because it kind of surprised me to find somebody at your senior level that was actively interested in this. But then again, it was 9/11, and they're pulling out stops all over the place to find out what was behind that event. So
Well,
anyway,
there was non-traditional organizations as well, some outside. This was it was a very rich period of what I would call NSA realizing, because of the failure to keep almost 3,000 people, they were going to, I mean, I ended up at the CIA with a special futures program where we were sitting around doing all the scenarios. I was involved at one point formally with the Toffler of the future shock. They actually have these workshops where you develop these scenarios. So yeah.
yep, familiar with a good bit of that. So, talk about your path from there to here. I want to kind of mine you a little bit about current events here in a minute, but you've started to look at the world obviously in a whole different way.
Yeah, well, that actually goes way back. This is where it's still to this day quite extraordinary, given what were extremely nonlinear experiences that I've had starting out at a very young age and then later as a young adult, and their near-death experiences. And so having the near-death experiences, one was like how extraordinarily precious life is. That was like sort of the first inkling. But it really led me to constantly asking why. Why are we here? Why are we on planet Earth? Why do we live? What's the purpose of life? Why is there war, conflict? Sort of the human condition at large. And it just became this quest. And the first near-death experience, which I actually will talk about in more detail because it was so significant, it was clear that that first one was, yeah, I was sitting there looking at myself, above myself. I was disappearing. And then I suddenly came back to my body. Later, I had the near-death experience where I know exactly what death is. Like death as in there's no, like, I was in a coma for 5 days. The rotating, they had like ministers and rabbis and priests actually gave me, there was a priest while I'm sitting there in a coma, and I didn't know this until my mother told me later when I came to, that he'd actually given me last rites. I thought it was, apparently they thought I was dying. Fortunately, I survived. Um, and then the most recent experience in the fully awake state, which was coming down with a rather virulent form of cancer, a rather rare form, in which I was certainly facing my own expiration date a lot sooner, but here I am, right? So it's certainly given me an extraordinary appreciation for just I'll just use the phrase, all the awe and wonder of life at large, both macro scale and at the micro scale, and that we're living on this extraordinary third rock from the sun on an outer arm of the Milky Way. And it's like, wow. It's just like, okay. So it's just interesting, this kind of both and life of the hidden life, exploring the hidden life, the unexamined life with the everyday life, right? And in some ways, and I haven't actually said this is the first time I'm saying it now, given everything I've been through in my own life in the last 3 years, living with cancer and now recovering from it. It's really this overlap, right? There's really this sort of, I'm coming
Yeah.
full circle. It's like I'm like returning to the very beginning. I'm returning to the epigenesis. I'm returning to the origin. So, and it's been an amazing journey, and I hope to share more of that next month.
It's a fascinating story,
Yeah.
and it's interestingly anomalous because, as I alluded to, those of us who have hung around the government a little bit don't hear many people talking in the terms that you're talking, and
No.
so to have come from this place of significant responsibility and awareness down into this other places are really quite going to be fun. And we're really looking forward to having you. And again, it's on the 19th for those of our viewers. It's on the 19th of July here in Berkeley Springs. It's both live, so you can come out here just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And we live stream it. So it doesn't make any difference where in the world you are. You can come and hear Tom's talk. It's Saturday, the 19th of July. But I'm interested in a little bit today in what's your take on what's happening in the world right now? You run around with a lot of people who are very connected within the present system. What is your take on it all?
Present systems collapsing, to say it mildly. What I sort of refer to as the age of man, I think is, as we know it, is coming to an end. I don't set dates. I've again, a whole nother part of my life, people that were constantly setting dates about the end times and when everything's going to fall apart, and all these visions of of apocalyptic nature. There's been many people over the years who've come and gone and said their time was the most interesting, that their time is when it all ended, that their time. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we're still here. But I think from the short 68 years of my physical life here on Earth, with all the experiences that I've had, we're facing, I must acknowledge, a dystopian set of multiple event horizons. And I think what's happening is they're all beginning to come together. They're not isolated, they're not apart, they're not separate. They may appear when you diagnose them or when you just look at them on the surface on a more linear way that they are separate and distinct, but in fact, they're actually all part of the same. And it is interesting as you approach, this is sort of the black hole, right? As you approach, it all kind of becomes one. And I find that the humanity at large is facing these event horizons, and it's an increasingly troubling age. It's accelerating. There's lots of travail. There's lots of war. There's lots of rumors of war. You just open up the front page or the latest news feed to see that conflict, violence, cruelty, inhumanity. But there's also, and this is what I find as part of this troubling trend, an increase in deception, propaganda, deceit. And I actually think that humanity at large faces a reckoning, a true reckoning. And I don't think that it's going to get worse, although I think there's going to be what I call a photopia. There's going to be an attempt through, I think, some cases, you can argue, rational means to solve our problems with our own devices and technology and other forms of knowledge. Personally, I think it's all going to come up short. But this is part of my talk, is where beyond all that, I think there's something extraordinary about this planet, but it's definitely going through pains. And beyond all the event horizons, beyond all that, and black holes apparently can merge beyond. So beyond the biggest of the black holes in terms of the future of the Earth, there is hope. And it's kind of like Pandora's box, right? You open it up, there's a bunch of theories, they all escape. You look in, what's looking back at you is the abyss, right, from which the theories escaped. The theories are not pleasant, right? But at the very bottom, in the Greek mythology, lies hope. And I really truly do see, and I've even had dreams about this, as well as some incredible conversations with people, that there is a future, and I'm going to say this kind of in a different way, in which the Earth is redeemed, the Earth is repaired, and the Earth is restored. And the visions, and I'm going to use the word visions I have, is it's an Eden-like, very much an Eden-like paradise with extraordinary technology, extraordinary culture, for the entire world.
It's a
And
wonderful vision. Yeah.
yeah, but I do think, and this is where this talk is going to be extraordinarily provocative. I have been doing some of the last, I'm actually coming full circle based on research I did over a number of years when I was younger, and off and on over the course of my professional life, both private industry as well as government. There's a spiritual aspect to all of this. And I will actually talk directly to that, both in terms of the dystopia, and as well as the utopia, okay, so to use that word, that we face going forward. And I can't even put into words, if you're in this new world, or you want to call it the world tomorrow, right? Beyond all the darkness and all the issues and problems that we face as a species, I think involves something that's far beyond even our imaginations, that we only see through this in part dimly, but there are certain indicators. And if you go all the way back into some of the ancient texts, and I'm talking like Joseph Campbell, Power of the Myth, and a number of others, there is these kernels of truth that begin to emerge. And so I keep going back further and further, going back even further. And there does, and I'm going to be very provocative in saying this, but this is part of the talk, that we are created beings. And I believe that we were literally created. It's not evolution, okay? That we were created, placed on this third rock from the sun. And though I know there's a lot of people, some poo-poo it, some people deny it. It's an extraordinary trip that we're on,
Yeah.
not just at the Earth level, but the cosmic level as well. And I can't begin, because you're talking about matter that's non-material. You're talking about matter that's of a whole different nature. You're talking about something even beyond quantum, right? Although quantum is certainly, I do touch on this, like what's sort of the fundamental fabric of just reality, period. So I have to admit, I'm also, as a human, I'm increasingly wearying of this world. I don't see, right, just again, the trend lines, as I used to say, even in the intelligence, right, are not good, right? They just aren't. I mean, this slope is we're sort of sliding into. I think there's a reason for it. There's a purpose for that. How else do we learn? How else do we grow? But I'm also worried that there's going to be those, and this is part of what we're already seeing emerging on the world scene, the increasing challenges to freedom and liberty, and even the
Right.
pursuit of happiness, to sort of derive a paraphrase derivation of the extraordinary document called the Declaration of Independence in terms of American history. But if you take it to the world level, there is increasing challenges to all forms of democracy and human freedom. And there is, well, let's solve it. Someone comes along, I've got the answer. I'm the strong man, right? Give me, either the hammer or the
Yeah.
sword. I'll solve it for you. Or coming along with beguiling language, promising peace and security. I mean, some of the language of late from certain political leaders is just astonishing in terms of its just hyperbolic nature. I also think there is a thing called evil, that evil and wickedness and wrongdoing is also very present, that there is something extraordinary about sort of this, I'll use the Italian word chiaroscuro, which sort of used in architecture as sort of lights and shadows, this interplay dance of lights and shadows. How would you know light without darkness? But then light reveals what's in the darkness, and much of we know, even in the material universe, is dark. So again, maybe that makes the light stand out better. that's just to be slightly poetic. But I do see this hope is that there is this rapid emergence of an awakening for those with ears to hear and eyes to see. But I do say that if there were not, weird form of English in terms of the construct here, if there isn't an intervention from what even the myths and the legends and other extraordinary texts that we have to this day, right? If it wasn't for the intervention of spiritual entities, right? And I'll just say creator, I think that we might just do ourselves in, similar to what sort of Daniel Ellsberg feared who I consider my whistleblower father, right? Going all the way back to my civic awakening in the 70s, which I touch on in my talk. He feared, that was his greatest fear, was we'd blow ourselves up or we would render the earth largely inhabitable. And we're not just talking normal like cycles and tectonic stuff and changes in the earth's orbit and magnetic, shifts and all that. All that I believe is in play. I really do. But then I continue to look at the bottom of Pandora's box, and I this extraordinary hope. I'm not just imagining this, John.
No, I agree. Yeah,
This future I believe is a supra reality, and I now embrace it. And
good.
I'm sort of pins and needles when I say this with you. I embrace it with unwavering faith that this beyond imagination future will actually occur, not just for humanity, but for the entire planet and eventually the entire universe.
Well, as you probably know, that's a subject that's very dear to our hearts here at the
Yeah.
Arlington Institute. And some of our big plans to try to facilitate that transition to that new world. And so we're very much interested in looking forward to hearing from you and have a chance to banter about some ideas here about the biggest change that's kind of happened in history, or at least recorded history. So we're looking forward to having you here with us on the 19th of July. That's a Saturday. And for our viewers, you can check this out at transitiontalks.org. And you'll see all the information about where we are. Again, we're in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And we always have a great time. We start on Friday night with a happy hour and then go most of the day on Saturday and then have dinner all together on Sunday night. So it's a fun, kind of community-oriented effort to get a group together and help those folks that are on the leading edge of all of this change. So thank you for what you're doing, Tom. Thank you for who you are, and thank you for coming to be with us on the 19th here in Berkeley Springs.
Well, I'm extraordinarily grateful for the invitation. I definitely am looking forward to the talk and just the communion with you and all who are interested, both there physically as well as online.
Yeah. Take care. See you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, John.